This film does everything that we are told we are not allowed to do. I think it's quite silly, actually, to have a conversation about runtime, because that's like criticizing a book for being 700 pages versus 100 pages.
These are the words of actor-turned-filmmaker Brady Corbet at the Venice International Film Festival premiere of his latest movie, The Brutalist, a 3-hour and 35-minute historical drama starring Adrian Brody. While Corbet's film is already receiving rapturous critical praise, it's telling that the most prominent conversation regarding the film is the one surrounding its length. Corbet's comments join a chorus of other filmmakers who've similarly had to defend the excessive runtimes of their films. Whether it be Martin Scorsese addressing the length of his latest crime epic, Killers of the Flower Moon. People say it's 3 hours, but come on. You can sit in front of the TV and watch something for 5 hours. Also, there are many people who watch theater for 3.5 hours. There are real actors on stage. You can't get up and walk around. You give that respect, give cinema some respect. Or James Cameron sticking up for the length of his sci-fi epic Avatar: The Way of Water. I don't want anybody whining about length when they sit and binge-watch television for 8 hours. I can almost write this part of the review, the agonizingly long 3-hour movie. It's like, give me a break. I've watched my kids sit and do 5 1-hour episodes in a row. Here's the big social paradigm shift that has to happen. It's okay to get up and go pee. Overlooking these filmmakers' various false equivalencies, the issue overlong films pose isn't a question of an audience's willingness to indulge in experimentation, as Corbett seems to think, or a matter of respect, as Scorsese does, or even the stamina of people's bladders, as Cameron would have you believe. Quite simply, it's a matter of real-world practicality, and more importantly, from a creative perspective, it's about the economy of storytelling. Two factors that traditional feature film length respects. But what is traditional feature film length anyway? Contrary to popular belief, there is no strict definition. The Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences, the American Film Institute, and the British Film Institute consider a film to be feature-length if it exceeds 40 minutes, while the Centre de la Cinématographie in France and the Screen Actors Guild don't believe a film achieves feature status unless it's at least 60 minutes long. However, both camps are undermined by the fact that the term feature film has nothing to do with length at all. Rather, the term is a remnant from the days prior to television when cinemas, the only real affordable means for the public to view motion pictures, would host programming blocks and Saturday matinees. These entertainment blocks often contained cartoons, newsreels, weekly serials, and short films. The term feature film was used to differentiate the main film in the program from what came before and after. It was literally the featured film, a motion picture that was advertised and got butts into seats. At the time, most feature films were only about 15 minutes long, the length of one reel of film. But everything changed with the release of Italian filmmaker Enrico Guazzoni's historical epic, 1913's Quo Vadis. Quo Vadis was one of the first films to hit a runtime of 2 hours and was a bona fide blockbuster before that term even existed. It was an epic of its era, featuring extravagant sets, thousands of extras, and real stunts. Due to its epic nature and equally epic runtime, the film was screened in concert halls rather than movie theaters, and was the sole attraction rather than merely being another cog in a programming block. The prestige picture was a hit that influenced other filmmakers of the time to create their own long-form films, with 2 hours becoming the unwritten industry standard. Of course, Quo Vadis' success alone wasn't the sole reason for that standard. Exhibitionists were also constrained by the technology and commercial demands of the time. As with anything, film reels cost money to manufacture, ship, and project, and the 2-hour runtime, about 9 reels of film, was a perfect balance for theaters and studios to see a return on their investment, keeping costs down while allowing theaters room for plenty of showings. For decades, those technological and commercial constraints maintained the status quo for feature length, while leaving room for the stray auteur to push the bounds of runtime. People like David Lean, Stanley Kubrick, and Francis Ford Coppola, artists who'd earned enough clout with studios and audiences to bend the unwritten rules of cinema. But due to certain audience misconceptions, the advent of digital technology, and the rise of streaming, the example these auteurs set have become the rule rather than the exception. So why exactly are films getting longer? According to a 1992 Entertainment Weekly article, the average runtime of a film in 1930 was 90 minutes, but by 1992 it was up to 121. As of this writing, the majority of the 10 highest grossing films of all time are well over 2 hours, with the top 4 meeting or exceeding 3. This data would seem to indicate that audiences have a thirst for long films. Similar to the misconception that an R rating and a dark tone make a film important or mature, it would seem that general moviegoers universe feels if length alone makes a film epic, giving studios little reason to curtail the lengths of their films. Then there are the technological changes. With the exception of prominent outliers like Christopher Nolan and Quentin Tarantino, the majority of filmmakers today shoot on digital rather than film. With the cost and constraints of physical film a thing of the past, artists are able to shoot and experiment as long as they like, giving them more options and a wealth of darlings they can refuse to kill later in editing. Exhibition has gone digital as well, reducing or eliminating the costs that come with manufacturing, shipping, and projecting film reels. That ease, combined with the accessibility of multiplexes, what we traditionally think of when we think of movie theaters, has made it easier than ever for cinemas to host longer films. Several screens equals several showings, even if a film is long in the tooth. Finally, there's the bane of all things true cinema: streaming. As the streaming wars rage on, streaming companies are in a constant battle to one-up each other by winning over prestige talent. To do this, they're not only offering them, what's the technical term? Assloads of money. They're also offering them unlimited creative freedom. And since the majority of these films are designed to be viewed at home, bypassing movie theaters entirely, there's very little incentive to keep runtime down, which is how we ended up with a 4-hour cut of a film that had already failed at the box office over on Max, as well as 2 more terrible films from the same director over at Netflix, each of which got their own director's cuts, which doesn't even make sense since the films were never bound by the constraints of a theatrical release anyway. Even respected filmmakers like the aforementioned Martin Scorsese have fallen victim to the pitfalls that come with streaming's lack of editorial oversight. His Netflix film The Irishman serving as a prime example, an overlong crime epic that somehow got away with distracting and unnecessary de-aging effects. That's not to say that The Irishman was a bad film. It wasn't. In fact, I'd argue that it wasn't a film at all. It was a miniseries. Just like how there's no official definition for when a film reaches feature length, there's also no definition for when a film stops being feature length. With that in mind, I believe that if your quote-unquote film was viewed primarily on television screens rather than theater screens, and is a full hour and a half longer than standard feature length, it's a television show and not a movie. Even if it does feature some of the best actors of our time and comes from one of our greatest living directors. If this observation makes me seem salty, it's because I am. Not only is Scorsese's hypocrisy annoying, policing what other films should or shouldn't be considered cinema while he actively undermines cinema by working in streaming, from a creative standpoint, there's a fact that I've rarely seen a 3+ hour film that actually needed to be 3+ hours. For example, the Batman could cut the bulk of the Catwoman Falcone storyline and wouldn't really be missing anything. Oppenheimer could lose the bulk of its second half, the battle over the man's security clearance and reputation, and would arguably have even more of an effect. And if I haven't turned you against me entirely, even The Godfather could cut nearly everything that happens in Italy and it wouldn't miss a beat. It's like an hour of the film, and aside from illustrating Michael's disillusionment, it has little to nothing to do with the rest of the movie. In fact, Peter Griffin was right.
Did not like the movie.
What didn't you like about it?
It insists upon itself, Lois.
If a high-concept science fiction classic like RoboCop can work in a superhero origin story, slick world building, and heaps of political and social commentary in a mere hour and 42 minutes, why can't filmmakers today, if for no other reason than the fact that I, like a lot of people, just don't have the time?
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Despite my complaints, I don't actually hate long movies. Some of my favorite films are long movies. I've got long movie friends. But what I don't have these days is a lot of time. When I was young, I'd spend many an afternoon and evening at the movie theater. Hell, I saw Peter Jackson's King Kong at the theater 5 times, and that movie sucks. But as a 36-year-old father of 2 with a full-time job and an occasionally successful, sometimes if you squint, YouTube channel, I don't often have the opportunity to spend the 4.5 hours required to go see a 3.5 hour film in the theater. Gotta factor in travel time, commercials, 30 minutes of trailers, and that one Nicole Kidman promo that asks me to come to a theater I'm already at. So sorry, Kevin Costner, director of Horizon and American Saga Part 1, even if your 3-hour vanity western was good, I still wouldn't have the time to go see it. And given the fact that that film was one of the biggest box office bombs of recent years, I'm guessing I'm not alone. If films these days were longer because the ideas and concepts they contained required that length to express, I wouldn't have a problem. But more often than not, these films push feature length because of streaming platforms attempting to keep eyeballs on their service for as long as possible, and indulgent auteurs. And while there's a wealth of indulgent auteurs defending this practice, I at least know that the equally accomplished Alexander Payne, director of Sideways and The Descendants, agrees with me. You want your movie to be as short as possible. There are too many damn long movies these days. If your movie's 3.5 hours, at least let it be the shortest possible version of a 3.5 hour movie. Like The Godfather Part 2 and Seven Samurai are super tight 3.5 hour movies, and they go by like that. So there's no ipso facto judgment about length. Let me know what you think about the epidemic of long movies down in the comment section below. Like me, do you think films are too long these days, or do you think it's a Three Bears situation and they're just right? Let me know. I'd also like to ask that if you liked this video, please hit the like button, press subscribe, click the bell, and share it with a friend. I'd like to say thanks in advance. Thanks for watching, and until next time, peace.